We just lost an apartment job and the guy that got it is going to lose his ass. So the other day I told you about a call that I got from a potential customer who was requesting a quote on their brand new apartment complex breezeways. There were 3 buildings, 3 stories, 7 breezeways. And in that video, I asked you guys to share with me what you would quote in the comment section. And I didn't say what I was going to quote because I do have competition locally that watches my channel. And my point of contact told me he was getting 3 other estimates. Well, the comment section was all over the place, all kinds of responses, everywhere from like $3,000 to $20,000 and everything in between. Now, we also need to remember that we all live in different areas. Our markets are different. Our businesses are different. Our cleaning seasons are different, all which definitely can have an impact on what we can charge and what our markets will bear. And if you stick around until the end of this video, I am going to share with you 3 pricing strategies that you need to avoid when quoting commercial jobs like this. So, like I had said in that video, the guy saw one of our QIQ video ads on Facebook. He gave us a call and we had a couple conversations. The first of which was just about the scope of work, what the timeline was, just the basic things. Now, he was offsite. He was up in Atlanta at their corporate headquarters. And like I said, we had the initial talk about the scope of work. But when I was on site, I did notice that the breezeways, definitely they needed a little rinse down, but he had mentioned that they weren't doing the walls or the ceilings, but they were covered in dust. So I called him and I said, hey man, what do you think about this? He said, absolutely. Definitely probably need a little wash down as well. And like I'd said in that video, this is new construction, no organic buildup. So there was absolutely no need for any kind of chemicals. The stair treads and the concrete in the breezeways were freshly poured. So no surface cleaning would be needed and never surface clean fresh, brand new concrete anyway. But they just needed a good thorough rinse down. So after walking the property, I'd come up with a price in my head, and I was basing this on a combination of things, but essentially how long this particular job was going to take. Breaking it down in my head, how long each breezeway was going to take us, each floor, and I know what my hourly rate is. And I came to that number after entering all my costs, all of my expenses in the hourly rate calculator in Quote IQ, so I know exactly where I stand. And I take all of that and some of the other factors that we talked about in the other video, like the fact that we would need to spend some time taping and bagging all the fire equipment in the breezeways because we don't want to set them off. And then the fire department comes and there has obviously the potential of a fine if that happens. But I did read a comment from the last video where he offered a little hack for if the alarm goes off by your doing when you're doing like commercial work like this. And he suggested that if you do happen to trip one, if it goes off, the fire department shows up, start a small fire and walk away. Now, this way, you don't have to pay any fines. Now, obviously, he was joking. I'm joking. Do not do that. But another factor I considered when coming up with the price is the fact that we are unbelievably busy this time of year. And I was looking at this job as a quick injection of high dollar commercial dollars into my business if they chose to go with us because our schedule is full and I would likely be displacing some of my other customers who were already on the schedule to get this job done for them in the timeline they needed, which is not a huge deal, but I really don't like to do it. But if we are going to take on jobs like this, we're going to get paid and we're going to get paid well. So all these factors come into play in how I determine my pricing. Now, in this particular scenario, it was not a simple square foot price. It just can't be, right? Regardless, like I said, I had the price in my head. I texted the guy and used one of my favorite little selling strategies, which typically works like a charm and basically allows me to almost immediately know if I'm going to get the job or not. And I typed it up and I pushed send. And I figured I would have heard back from him pretty quickly. That's how he had been responding in the past. And he had his read messages thing on, right? So I could see that he read my message, but no response. So I go about my day and I look at my phone a little bit later, no response. So I wait a couple more hours, then I hit him with another text. Hey there, just wanted to follow up and see what your thoughts were. Again, he read it. He didn't respond. And I thought that was kind of weird. We had built some rapport. I felt good about it, but he wasn't responding. The other thing is I did send a formal quote through Quote IQ. So I get notifications when it's delivered, when it's opened. And so obviously I know that he saw it, right? But again, still no response to either text or my email. And at this point, the writing is on the wall, right? He did not like my number, right? He didn't like the price. Maybe it was too high, which I'm guessing it was. And now I know it was, but That's all fine and well, right? But again, still no response to either that email or my text messages. So at this point, the writing is on the wall. He didn't like my number, which is fine. It was high. They needed it done in a hurry for an inspection. And because they were in a time crunch, the price went up and our schedule is full. And my prices aren't cheap from the get go. But I thought that there may have been a chance. And this is a good time to talk about one rookie mistake that so many guys make. I hear and I see it all the time. And that is when guys give bigger quotes, their eyes get super big, right? This particular quote wasn't that big, but when they see a high ticket price, a big quote, they start spending that money, buying new trucks, buying new equipment, right? Before their customers even actually seen the quote. But in their minds, they're like, oh, this is going to be huge. Don't do that, right? I've been there, I've done that. And just don't be that guy, okay? I've learned that the only person that is in control of a quote is the guy saying yes or no to the estimate. Regardless, like I said, the writing was on the wall. He clearly didn't like my price. And now he was going to kind of be a prick and not even respond to me, which, again, not the most professional, but it is what it is. So I sent him over another text and I said that I understand if the price didn't work out, but out of common courtesy and professionalism, a simple response to my text message would have been appreciated. Regardless, best of luck to you, sir. Anyway, again, it was read with no response. And then about 15 minutes later, I get a message from him that said that they went with somebody else that had given them a significantly lower price. And that was exactly what I expected to hear back from him. And out of morbid curiosity, I needed to know what the price was. So I asked. Now, before I tell you the price that I gave him and the price the competitor gave him, I wanted to talk about a couple pricing strategies that you need to avoid at all costs when quoting commercial jobs. The first, never charge by the hour. This is one of the monumental mistakes that I think a lot of guys make, and it's not great for a couple reasons. The first reason is most people don't understand their numbers. And if you don't understand your numbers, you don't have a grasp on your data, on your numbers, all the components that make up what you need to charge per hour, right? If you don't know what those are, then don't charge by the hour because you're basing it on nothing other than just a guess. And we can't run our businesses on guesses. And earlier you heard me say that one of the components of how I quote is time. And that is absolutely correct. But it is just one of the many components. And the other thing is I'm giving a price, an overall price. I would never in a million years tell my customers what our hourly rate would be, right? We have minimum prices, of course, but I'm never going to share what my hourly rate is because they think that this opens the whole thing up for negotiation. And if something doesn't take as long as I say it's going to take, then they're going to want to talk about it. And that's not a conversation that I want to have, right? Because quite frankly, it's none of their business what my hourly rate is. They are paying for the results. They are not paying for my time. Okay, so the next thing that you want to avoid is market penetration pricing. And that is a really nice way to say that you're going to be a cheap ass and you're going to undercut everybody else, regardless if you're making money or not, because you think this is a sound way to get your foot in the door or to secure jobs if you happen to be new. And yeah, it's true. Sometimes the cheapest price does get the job, but that is not always the case. There are scenarios, and more than you would think, where you don't have to be the cheapest guy to get the job. Now, as you're about to hear, I wasn't the cheapest guy and I didn't get the job. And that's okay. But it's going to reaffirm what I'm talking about here. And that is good on you for securing the job, bad on you for losing your ass, bad on you for not making any money, bad on you for working for free. And essentially, you're not just working for free, you're actually losing money. And sure, you maybe get a little bit of experience. Sure, your truck is going to be in front of an apartment complex, but that doesn't mean shit if you are spending hours and hours and hours not making any money, or even worse, losing money. Not only that, but the perception that you're the cheapest means people will never see you as a high quality service provider. You're always going to be the cheap guy, okay? And they're always going to expect cheap prices. And at some point after you've penetrated the market, you're not going to want to continue to be that cheap, I assure you. And that is if you actually make it past year one. And it's a hell of a lot easier to raise prices than it is to lower them. So the last one that I want to touch on is something that is kind of a double-edged sword, okay? And that is competitive pricing. Yes, you have to know your market. Yes, you have to know where your competitors are, but this does not mean that their pricing should be the same as yours. You have a unique business. You have a unique set of circumstances in your business. And just because someone else is charging a specific price, this doesn't mean that you should match it or undercut them, right? Competitive pricing has the potential to be a race to the bottom, and that is one race that you do not want to win, right? Because if you're continually lowering your prices to match or undercut your competition, could possibly lead to a price war. I've seen it happen, and this results in reduced profit margins for everybody. And with the reduced profit margins, it's a hell of a lot harder to grow, scale, to reinvest in your business, and you're not making as much money, which it sucks. And another thing is with this type of strategy, oftentimes guys ignore their cost, right? I did touch on that briefly, but basing your pricing strictly on your competitors, it ain't good. And pricing like this is going to lead to situations where your own costs aren't covered, and your pricing structure, your operational costs, they could be higher than your competition's, right? So it's profitable for them. It's not for you. And this is not healthy for your business. It is unsustainable for the long haul. And the last thing about this is it makes you look like a punk ass bitch because you're undermining your own value. If you know what your competition is pricing, your customers know what your competition is pricing, and you just come in and undercut them, that could send a really negative message that your service is not as good. And this kind of goes hand in hand with that market penetration strategy. If you price low enough to get the job and somehow you make it until the next season, it makes it really hard to increase your pricing when your customer sees you as the cheap guy, as the value guy, right? At the end of the day, he looks at you like you're a chump and he knows that he got over on you. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you the price that I quoted on these 5 breezeways, because at this point, it makes no difference. And again, please remember that your price, it may be higher, it may be lower, it may be right in line with mine. And in the comment section down below, tell me if you thought my price was accurate for these breezeways and what you would have quoted. So I guesstimated that this job was probably going to take about a day and a half. And I was putting in that extra day and a half just in case, but with no residents to deal with, no cars in the parking lot to deal with, ample water supply, no chemicals to worry about, which essentially cuts the process in half because you're not applying chemicals and then rinsing chemicals. You're just rinsing everything one time, right? One time only, in and out, easy peasy. So this is what I quoted. I quoted $5,200 for the entire job, just a little over $1,000 per breezeway. And yeah, probably a little high for my market, maybe not for yours. But again, taking into consideration all the things I shared with you and the reasoning behind my price, I stand by that number, because if I didn't have a really full schedule, I probably would have been a little bit more aggressive. But in order to jump through the hoops for somebody else's timeline, like I said, we're going to get paid. And yes, I told you that I was going to share with you guys what the other company quoted, the one who was awarded this job. And I'm still a little bit surprised, to be honest, but they chose to provide an estimate for these breezeways, right? 3 buildings, 5 breezeways, 3 stories tall, for a grand total of $950. And not $950 per breezeway. That would have been okay. $950 for the entire job. Do you think that this guy is making a profit?